Hello everyone, this is John Cogan, the CEO of Performative, the online community for corporate finance, accounting, treasury, and related professionals. I would like to welcome everyone to today's webinar entitled What's Stopping CFOs from Moving Accounting to the Cloud? CFOs are well informed on the potential benefits of the cloud, but recent surveys indicate that CFOs are still reluctant to fully move their back office operations into the cloud, citing, amongst others, integration issues, security concerns, and the pain versus the gain of implementing new processes. As the market has matured, the offerings related to integration, security, and other implementation issues have become even more diverse. During this webcast, we'll cover the challenges of moving accounting and ERP into the cloud, including what to look for and what to guard against. When it's your time to move your back office into the cloud, you'll understand how to maximize the gain without all the pain. First, I'd like to start off by thanking TriBridge for helping us make this event possible. We greatly appreciate their support, and they have been great supporters of Performative, and they really know today's subject matter. So we appreciate their ongoing commitment to Performative and everything we do for our community. So thanks to TriBridge. A few items we need to go through before we get started. First off, a quick overview of Performative for those who have not been to Performative before. This might be your first event. We are the largest and fastest growing online resource and community for corporate finance, treasury, accounting, and related professionals. It's a very large community, and it's completely ad-free and noise-free. It's just peers helping peers. It's a wonderful resource, and we encourage you to check it out at performative.com. A few notes specifically on today's event. Number one, links to today's presentation and to the recording of this webinar will be sent out to all attendees within 24 hours of this event. The presentation is actually already posted on Performative at www.performative.com/resources. If you'd like to follow along as we go, or print it out, what have you, or even share it with colleagues, feel free to grab it there right now, performative.com/resources. We are offering CPE credits for today's event. Hopefully you pre-registered for CPE credits if you want those credits. If not, or if you have any questions at all about CPE credits in this program today, please contact Chris Brower. You can see her contact information there at the bottom of that bullet, cbrower@performative.com. We would like this to be an interactive experience today. We will initially run through a presentation. We've got about 30 slides plus or minus with two wonderful speakers who I'll introduce in a few moments. And then we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So please do ask questions. You can ask as we go. If you want to take a quick look at your GoToWebinar control panel, you should see a little area there entitled Questions. You might have to hit the plus to expand it. And then you can ask questions at any time. We'll do our best to get to those questions. And if we don't have time to get to all of your questions during the Q&A period, we'll work with our speakers today to follow up with you afterwards. Lastly, you will be asked to take a short survey today. As soon as the webinar is done, you will be presented with a 60-second survey. It's very brief. We greatly appreciate your feedback. Also, in that survey, if you would like to be connected to either or both of today's speakers or someone at TriBridge, today's event sponsor, we make that very simple. Click of a mouse for you, and we're very happy to make those introductions and put you together directly with the speakers of today's event. So that's it for the event notes. We do have a couple of quick learning objectives to hit here. I won't go through these each, but at the end of the day, we certainly want you to be far better informed on the potential benefits, the upsides and the downsides of the cloud and how companies and finance professionals are dealing with these issues today and successfully moving their company's technology into the cloud. So thanks so much for joining us today, and it's my pleasure to introduce the two speakers who will be helping us out today. First up is Greg Pierce. Greg is a Vice President at TriBridge Concerto Cloud Services. Greg is a 20-year technology consultant with a passion for developing highly optimized solutions. Greg is one of the foremost experts on cloud computing trends, systems integration, and deployment strategies. Greg is an avid speaker at Fortune 500 enterprises, industry conferences, and user groups. As VP of Concerto Cloud Services, Greg develops the strategic direction, vision, and product offerings for the firm's Concerto Cloud Services and manages service and delivery for all cloud-based deployments. Prior to joining Tribridge, Greg owned and operated 2 companies that provided a variety of IT managed services and cloud computing solutions for customers throughout the U.S., including platforms for the delivery of ERP and other core business applications via private cloud since 2004. Greg has also served as a CIO. He holds an MBA from USF. Our second speaker today, or joining Greg, I should say, is Bob McAdam. Bob is the Vice President of Finance at Dynamic Communities, Inc. Bob has spent several years in the Dynamics GP Partner Channel, where he sold, designed, and deployed Dynamics GP solutions in a variety of industries. Prior to joining DCI, Bob was actively involved in Microsoft Dynamics GP User Group, serving on the User Group's Summit Planning Committee and Academy Board. Bob began his Dynamics GP career in 1998, working with ePartners as an implementation consultant, later becoming IT director. Let's see, Bob has earned an MBA from Clarkson University. And with that, I think we're through with the introductions. Greg and Bob, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us today.
John, thank you very much, and thank you to Performative for hosting us today.
You bet.
So what we're planning to cover today are several items related to cloud computing and the benefits that can be derived from cloud, as well as some of the things that are real and perceived hurdles for companies to move to cloud. And specifically, we're going to look at some of the things that tie to moving accounting or ERP systems to the cloud and top-of-mind concerns for CFOs and in some cases for others within the organization. So what we'll start off with today is some information on how cloud accounting can benefit you and what some of the pros are to moving your ERP system to the cloud. Also, we're going to go through in pretty great detail a listing of things that are concerns and fears for CFOs when they're looking at moving to the cloud. And some of those things I think John alluded to earlier, and it comes down to security and data control and really a level of trust with the cloud provider. I think also important to cover is when is it appropriate and when is it beneficial to actually move your systems to the cloud as opposed to maintaining a traditional on-premise implementation, and what does it look like when you move to the cloud as far as the implementation and some of the pros and cons as you move forward, whether private cloud or public cloud is the right solution for you. And finally, we'll go into a greater understanding of cloud contracts, how cloud contracts are priced, and some of the kind of behind-the-scene things that happen when a cloud provider is putting together contracts, and some of the negotiation items and some of the clauses that you're going to want to look for as you move into a cloud contract. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Bob McAdam. As John had mentioned, he's Vice President of Finance for Dynamic Communities. And Bob's going to speak a little bit about Dynamic Communities and what they do and some of the reasons that they moved to cloud and some of the concerns that they had. Bob?
Okay, Greg. Hey, thanks very much for inviting me today. I really appreciate it. And thank you, John. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bob McAdam. I'm Vice President of Finance at Dynamic Communities here in Tampa. Dynamic Communities is the administrative organization behind the software user groups that are in and around the Microsoft Dynamics ERP and CRM line. Okay, so our groups are run by the users, and each of the groups has a board that governs it, but we are the behind-the-scenes folks that help make it all work and support each of these organizations so that the users and the partners who leverage our services become smarter and more efficient with Microsoft Dynamics CRM and the various Microsoft Dynamics ERP applications. Okay, our mission in essence is to foster the development and growth of these groups so that everyone involved can be more inclined and more efficient with the products they're using every day. So as someone who's in charge of the back office, we spent some time in the past couple of years contemplating moving our accounting into the cloud. Okay, the company is probably 6 or 7 years old, has 30 employees roughly, and in the past couple of years we've really seen some nice growth. We were running Dynamic CRM with a different provider in a different cloud space, but as our company grew, we decided that we needed to exit our smaller mom and pop shop software for ERP and graduate, if you will, to something more robust, preferably something on Microsoft SQL Server. So that's when we started assessing what it is that we were going to do going forward. How are we going to make this change for ourselves and also integrate with what we had already? So those were some important aspects, and there were a lot of variables that we discussed internally trying to determine if we were going to do this ourselves, move to the cloud completely, or maybe find something in the middle with a data center. Okay, so while there are plenty of variables to discuss, the 4 main ones are listed on this slide. It really helps bring our discussions into perspective. Security concerns for me were the first items that I was concerned of. When I talk about security, I'm talking really twofold. A, what's the security going to be like for me as an end user no matter where I'm at? Okay, traveling a lot, you're on broadband on an airplane, in a hotel, at your home, at your office. Are all those connections going to be secure? Secondly, if I'm in the cloud, if my data is in the cloud, my data lives there at the end of the day. Whether I'm extracting data from the databases or I'm putting data in there myself, I need to know that that environment is secure behind solid firewalls, and my data has a good place to rest each night as far as backups and what have you goes. So for me, while cost is certainly important, and I listed that second, security concerns were really top priority, because if I can't have a solid connection and know that my transmissions and my data's final resting place, if you will, aren't secure, then the cost is really going to be irrelevant, because I'm not going to be happy and I'm not going to be satisfied with how we're working with our data. Cost, of course, was important. We had to assess, if we were going to do this ourselves, what sort of infrastructure investments would we have to make? What sort of resources would we have to hire to manage these infrastructure pieces? Dynamic Communities is a company of around 30 people, and as we're growing and trying to do more over in Europe to run parallel with what we're doing in North America for our members, we don't have the resources to take on large projects like rolling out an ERP on-premise or a SharePoint server or Exchange, things of that nature. So we assess the cost of doing it ourselves on-premise or going to a data center and working a deal with the data center where we could be hosted, but we'd still be essentially responsible for equipment, etc. So cost, going to the cloud, made sense for us as we looked at all the numbers and our size and our needs and how fast we wanted to roll out new applications from Microsoft. The third item here is integration capabilities. Again, we had CRM, Dynamic CRM, in a different competitor's cloud, but we wanted Dynamic CRM and Dynamics GP, which is our ERP system, to communicate together with one another. Okay. We also have other systems that we use outside of our cloud environment, where we say take reservations for events and obtain training requests and monies from users who want to attend GPUG Academy or AXUG Academy events, etc. So we have different systems outside of our cloud that we need to integrate data from as well. So to me, being able to integrate not just internally, SharePoint, CRM, GP, etc., but also with external data sources, and to know that those that those transmissions are coming in securely and accurately was also an important factor for us. We don't have very many integrations running now, but as we grow, we expect those to grow with us. So that was a high priority list for us, running GP and CRM in the cloud. Lastly, ongoing support and upkeep. Okay, again, fewer than 30 employees. I myself have experience in the Dynamics GP space, but I also have a job full-time that keeps me busy here at DCI. And while I can support some troubleshooting efforts for the ERP here, things are going to arise, and we needed a cloud support, or we needed a cloud host that could just do more than host for us. If we have troubleshooting issues around SQL Server or Exchange or CRM or GP, we needed an answer, and we needed to go to one place in order to obtain that answer. No one likes it when their email goes down. No one likes it when their data is not accessible, be it weekday, weeknight, whenever it is. I need to get in there. So not just the ongoing upkeep and maintenance and firewalls, which I expect from a cloud host, but also subject matter experts across the various applications that we can leverage as we need to. So those four pieces: security concerns, the twofold piece, cost, integration capability, and the ability to support our applications, not just host them, were some of the primary reasons we ultimately ended up deciding to move into the TriBridge Cloud for our front and back office applications. All right, so the TriBridge Cloud was our ultimate choice, okay? And the three main bullet points there really spell it out. The IT footprint is really on their side of the fence. They're doing the heavy lifting, if you will, as far as servers, networking, firewalls, supporting our connections, supporting us in general. They have all the infrastructure needs and backups and maintenance and all the items that high technology requires you to have in place and running on their side of the fence, and they manage it for us, and we don't worry about it. Okay. Full solution. Again, we were running Dynamics CRM, but we wanted Dynamics GP, and we wanted them integrated, and we wanted Office 365. We wanted email in the cloud. We were not going to run or support our own Exchange server. SharePoint, same deal. We wanted SharePoint. We wanted to leverage that and Microsoft Link to communicate with one another, because we're spread out all over the country, and there is no centralized office here in Tampa where everybody shows up to work every day. So the full solution for us, being able to aggressively roll out all these applications at the same time to kind of catch up with our CRM, was also important. And of course, TriBridge's expertise and reputation. Again, they have subject matter experts across multiple applications, so if I need a SQL Server troubleshooter, I can get one. If I need someone to assist me with a Dynamics GP issue, I can get one. Exchange, Office 365, etc. And of course, the reputation. We were able to do research on the company's reputation and find out what was driving their success and how they were doing with other cloud customers and in their areas of subject matter expertise regardless. So those were important pieces. So my keys to success in moving to the cloud really kind of came down to these items. There are a lot more, but these are the main ones. If you're contemplating going into the cloud, you need to address the priority systems first, okay? We were already on Dynamics CRM, so our priority system was Dynamics GP. Get our ERP up and running, people trained, processes documented, etc. CRM came into the cloud shortly thereafter, and then we began working in the same arena, all the employees together. But for us, addressing one priority system first was helpful. In my book, if you bite off more than you can chew, it's going to come back and get you later. So assess your resources, assess your needs, and determine what makes sense for your organization. These are complex technologies, and you just have to be careful and roll them out carefully and easily so that they all make sense to all those who will be working with them. Don't underestimate implementation planning. There are a lot of cloud applications that it seems like you just flip the switch and they run. But the fact of the matter is, whether you're implementing an ERP or CRM system down the hall on-premise or you're doing it in the cloud, there's still design, planning, testing, etc. Those things can't be disregarded because you're going to the cloud. So it's a project at the end of the day, and that's how it needs to be treated. Aligning internal IT support. This is an important element. It wasn't so much for dynamic communities because we really don't have an IT department, which is yet another reason why we went cloud. But oftentimes rallying the IT team when you're going to move some of their responsibilities into the cloud is an important element in making sure that all are on board. Okay. Moving to the cloud does not mean the IT department is necessarily getting smaller. There's a lot to do with complex technology, and IT resources generally have broad backgrounds and can manage multiple things. So just be careful of that element if you have a standing IT department now and you're contemplating moving a portion of what they're responsible for elsewhere. Understand the costs that are involved. Okay, to me, moving to the cloud meant not having to invest in infrastructure or networks or a data center, if you will. Okay, we're trying to go forward with the latest Microsoft technologies, GP 2013, CRM 2011, SharePoint 2013, etc. And certain pieces of hardware that have been reliable to you in the past, you know, Server 2003 machines and XP workstations that have been reliable to the company for a long time are not what you want to bank your future software projects on, okay? So for us to make these aggressive rollouts of a new ERP, new Exchange, etc., going forward and doing it all simultaneously, in essence, meant that there were going to be a lot of hardware, networking, firewall, etc., costs involved, not to mention people behind the scenes to support those. So please, when you're looking at your costs, assess all of those things carefully so that you're clear on what's ahead. Validate support requirements. All complex technologies need some level of support. You need to assess your cloud provider and see that not only they can host your solution, but they can help you when problems arise. Hopefully they'll be minimal, but problems do arise, and oftentimes they have to be addressed right away. Finally, testing is of course important. Any type of change, support, hotfix, service pack, any type of change that affects your cloud environment needs to be tested. So with a cloud environment, testing is readily available like it would be on-premise. So we made sure that we are going to be able to test changes that we wanted to roll out, and Tribe would be there to support us. And that's exactly what we've had. So these are the key items in my mind to moving to the cloud. And while there are a lot of them, certainly some stood out more so than others, and these are the ones I felt like really needed to be addressed for those contemplating this.
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, and you know, as Bob walks through some of the concerns and some of the reasons that dynamic communities moved, you know, I think that ties very nicely into some of the top benefits that customers can derive from moving to the cloud. And I think it really is important to start with, you know, is cloud something that's going to be around for a long time, or is it a fad? And I really think it is going to be around. It's a great model for companies to work within. If you look at Forrester studies, show that by 2015, 50% of software implementations are going to be done in cloud, which means that from that point forward, you're going to have more implementations done on a cloud platform than you do on-premise, which is pretty amazing considering the level or the percentage of implementations that are being done right now. Now, part of what has driven that is really this whole idea of the consumerization of IT. And many of you on the phone, probably all of you on the phone, have smartphones and iPads and different tablets that you use at home. And you're also using them at work. Matter of fact, many people end up with this kind of phantom buzz if they don't have their phone on or within their pocket because you're just so used to having it, it becomes an extension of who we are. If you look at IT groups, in a recent survey, 20% of IT groups said that they allowed these unmanaged devices to attach to their network. Conversely, when users were polled, 90% said that they actually use them to connect to their systems. Well, what does that mean? It means that you have to have a system that's available all the time, that has a high degree of stability and has a high degree of functionality. So let's dig into some of these benefits and why people are moving to cloud. And it starts with agility. Now, when you think about it from an agility standpoint, what that means is it removes some of the uncertainty in putting in a system. And in this case, we're speaking about ERP systems. So if you were to implement in cloud as opposed to on-premise, it allows you to adjust for users that may be coming on. So if you add more people, if you're adding more customers, if at some point you reach an economy of scale where you can have less people providing more work for your customers, then you can actually scale back the number of users as well. So all these things are great benefits of cloud from an agility standpoint, because think about it from this perspective. If you're implementing a solution and it's going to be on-premise, then that implementation has to be able to provide for your peak capacity from day one. With cloud, you can have that capacity as needed. Let's take, for example, a customer that we have that is in the retail industry. And as you can imagine, between November and January timeframe, their computing needs are much higher than they are at other times of the year. Well, what they're able to do is go ahead and increase their computing platform and their consumption during that time, pay for what they use, and then they can always scale back afterwards so they don't have to keep paying for that extra capacity. Now, if you look at it from a focus perspective, I think it's obvious that most companies aren't in the IT business. Now, there's some that are technology companies, of course, but we're in the business of providing professional services, or in the business of providing manufacturing, or consumer and packaged goods, or healthcare. And IT is something that we need to support the business. So that lack of focus in that area can lead to issues. Sometimes it doesn't support the revenue goals of the company. Sometimes IT has difficulty supporting the cost and operational models. And if you move to a cloud-based system, the cloud-based system should be able to provide a higher level of focus, people that are experts in that area, in multiple pieces of technology that are required to be able to make your systems run properly.
Focus is a big part of our cloud strategy at Dynamic Communities. We have some folks that are good with Dynamics GP, Dynamics CRM, but at the end of the day, we need them spending time on growing our business and getting our arms around it. So that was a big consideration for us.
Now, if you look at it from the standpoint of implementation, a traditional model would dictate that there would first be operational pieces that are put in place in order for an application to run. So if you're a CFO, you probably spend time with your IT group figuring out which servers and SANs and all different pieces of hardware and software need to be put in place just to be able to get the system to run. If you're moving into a cloud platform, those things are already in place, and there is a base level of repeatability in many of the systems. So instead of having to re-implement servers and SQL servers and all these different pieces, you have in place the ability to just implement a system in a footprint that has been done in the past. So what would have taken 3 weeks or 4 weeks in the past now takes 3 or 4 hours, or in some cases 10 or 15 minutes. So it's a very compelling change. So part of that leads to the ability to deliver in a much more rapid manner. So with a SaaS solution, instead of going through all those procurement cycles, and instead of having to spend time implementing the operational underpieces and cogs that you need, you're able to put in place a system fairly rapidly. And really what that does is it changes the focus. So instead of focusing on pieces that are connected to virtualization or IT in general, you can focus on the functionality of the system and perhaps how you can better leverage the customer relationship management piece of it, how you can make the balance sheet and what you get from a reporting perspective even more beneficial to the business. And the very nice thing about cloud is all of these things can be delivered for less than it costs to do it on-premise. Now, it's very important when you look at the cost structure to understand what your true costs are first. So when we say lower cost, it's a lower cost overall, which would include hardware components and software components, but also human capital components and the people that are required to keep things running. Your data center costs and power, cooling, and the space it takes to be able to house that equipment. There's software maintenance included and the cost it takes just from a regular ongoing basis to support. So once you look at all those things together, cloud is a very compelling model. So if you look at Forrester and Gartner surveys, there are many concerns that CFOs have about moving out to the cloud in general, not only to the cloud, but ERP systems, which are the lifeblood of many companies. It really starts with security and privacy, and we're going to go in depth on every single one of these items. The ability to integrate with other applications, because your systems can't just exist on an island. How fast is it going to be? You know, you're accessing these systems over the internet, and sometimes because there are performance issues that are noticed on on-premise systems, there's a fear that if you move them outside your four walls, there'd even be more of a performance hit. People have for years dealt with cell phone contracts and others where you're tied to a long-term agreement. So there's some concern about being locked in. And then when a total cost of ownership calculation is put together, oftentimes it doesn't include all of the pieces, and it's not an apples-to-apples comparison, so you end up feeling like the total cost of ownership is actually higher. Many who look at cloud feel like SaaS is not customizable. And SaaS is software as a service, which means that you're receiving this application over the internet. And in a SaaS model, there is a public cloud versus a private cloud model, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And many are also concerned about the migration, how you're going to transition, what may be lost from a user perspective or from a data integrity perspective. There seem to be a lot of different offerings out there, and it's difficult to weed through them to figure out which one may be right for you, if any, and then how it's priced and what that pricing includes and what it doesn't include, and how your internal IT is going to be able to connect out to the cloud support systems and work with cloud. And the interesting thing is that if you look at objections to cloud, even though we're talking about concerns from a CFO perspective, many within the IT arena have objections as well. And actually, it's somewhere around 70% of the objectors within an organization to cloud computing come from within the IT group.
Okay, thanks for that information, and we'll be getting right back to more. But first, we're going to launch our first of 3 polling questions. Once again, if you're here for CPE credits, you must take all 3 of these. We've got the first one now, the second one at the end of the slides, and the third one at the very end of the webinar. But even if you're not here for CPE credit, we'd love you to take a quick look. It'll take you 10 seconds to read and answer this. It's statistical in nature. We will not show who's answering what on this webinar, so you don't have to worry about that. It's just interesting information. If we have time, we'll actually take a look at some of the results when we get into Q&A. I'll go ahead and leave this open for another 5 seconds or so here to make sure we've given everyone ample time to provide their answers. I also will take a moment right now to remind folks to ask questions, please, via the question area in the GoToWebinar control panel. If you have any questions, you can ask those at any time, and we will do our best to get to those in the Q&A period that will be coming up at the end of this presentation. And with that, now back to Greg and Bob.
John, thank you. So let's start with security and privacy issues. There's definitely concerns that tie to security, and rightfully so. If you look at the news these days, there's conversations about hacking from China. There's a lot of compliance demands upon businesses. And if you look at security, your security within a cloud system, ERP or otherwise, should be at least as good or better than what you're going to get internally. And some of you on the call, I'm sure, are in smaller organizations, and you should move upward from a security perspective when you move to a cloud platform and get an enterprise level of security. At a base level, you should certainly be able to meet any compliance demands that your business is subject to, whether it be SOC or HIPAA or some federal regulation. And beyond just the compliance piece, I think you want to have best practices in place. We used to say when people would ask about security within cloud that it's much like talking about putting your money in a bank. You know, is it safer to have your money in a bank, or is it safer to have it in a sock under your mattress? Well, about 3 years ago, that argument stopped being as compelling because the banks started folding, but the security issues are still there, and the premise of it is still the same. If you have best practices in place from a security perspective, and you have things like IDS, which is intrusion detection, and intrusion prevention, IPS, those are things that are going to make your environment much more secure. In that case, you have live people sitting there all the time looking to determine if there's anything that's what's called out of band, an attack on your system, somebody trying to get into your system that shouldn't be there. And then also protection for data at rest is important, because not only is it important to measure what's going on with live connections, but also when your systems are sitting still. Also included in security and privacy issues should be regular process and procedures built into the system by your cloud provider to handle the onboarding and the termination of employees and connections that you're going to have from your organization. Somewhere around 80% of security incursions happen from inside. Having the separate cloud system helps layer in an added level of security.
I'm really glad you put this one first, Greg, because businesses just cannot afford gaps in this area. It's just too problematic. So that's why it's listed here first. That's why I listed it first. A really important aspect of the whole cloud computing idea.
Now, when you put a system in place, and if you have it in the cloud, you're almost certainly going to have connections with other applications. So there's things you need to do to ensure that your system is going to be able to integrate. And I'm thinking about a customer that we have that is in our cloud, and they're in the hospitality industry. So they receive requests from their customers via a web portal for tea times, and then they're able to take that information and they're able to move it directly and seamlessly into their ERP system. Now, that level of integration is very important. Now, what will happen is if you look at cloud-based ERP systems, you have two different ways that you can look at it. One is what's called public cloud, and one is what's called private cloud. Public cloud is going to be a system that's built where there's a shared code base, and without getting too technical, what it means is that there's a lot of shared components. Your data is separate, but all the other pieces are very close to the same. In a private cloud environment, you're going to have a dedicated system, which leads to the ability to have a much higher level of integration. Think about it like having a condo in the public cloud solution. So you have a little separate space for yourself, but a lot of space in common. And the other, like owning a house, and you can do a lot of different customizations, and it's very open with what you want to do. The difference is the dedicated resources and having in place the ability to really control your environment end to end. The other important part, I think, when you're looking at integrating with your other applications is to make sure it's going to work. It should work is probably another term for we haven't done this before. So it's very important to vet it out, go through a level of user acceptance testing, make sure if you can, unless it's a very remote system that is not very well known within the marketplace, that your cloud provider and whoever is helping from the implementation standpoint, hopefully it's the same group, are able to say that they've done it before. So performance is another key point that is brought up from a cloud perspective, because you are accessing systems outside of your organization. Now, there's things that you need to be able to put in place from a speed perspective. And one of the things that you want to do right out of the gate is make sure that the system has been built specific to be able to run what your needs are. In other words, it's not just the baseline, and it's not just a rudimentary amount or system requirement type implementation, but it includes everything you're going to need to be able to meet your needs. Make sure it's burstable. In other words, as you move forward and you have more needs, it's going to be able to scale to meet them. And what you should really be getting is an infrastructure, a cloud infrastructure that's enterprise ready, but you should be able to get it at a lower price. So another concern is this thought that you're going to be locked in. And as you go through a cloud contract and look at how it's built, you do have a monthly amount that you owe, but there are outs included. So some of the outs may be tied to functionality. It can be tied to performance. They can also be tied to service level agreements, or SLAs, which dictate a percentage of uptime that is absolutely guaranteed by the cloud provider. It also takes you out of this whole idea of a 36-month upgrade cycle. And by that I mean most companies every 3 years replace and recycle and refresh the infrastructure that they have in place, and the servers and the desktops and the PCs, and all of that cost and aggravation and expertise really adds up over a period of time. And the same thing over and over and over. And you get out of that 36-month cycle. What it also does is it removes that reliance on just one or two people. Now, you're relying on a cloud provider in this case, but the cloud provider has 20, 30, 50, 100 experts that understand how to make sure that the applications that run your business continue to function at an optimal level, as opposed to having one person who has that in their brain, so you avoid that kind of hit by the bus scenario where somebody decides to quit or leave, and they leave with all the institutional knowledge of your systems.
Seamless upgrade cycles for us was an important component as well. Obviously, the infrastructure has to be switched out now and then, but moving it from one machine to another on our end is seamless. We don't even see it occurring.
So another concern is that the total cost of ownership is actually higher. And when you dig in and you include software and the maintenance that's connected to the software and the hardware, and as I said before, the power, cooling, space, disaster recovery, and beyond that, the people that are required, the process that's required, and the procedures, being able to do things in a very systematic, workmanlike manner can be difficult, and it requires people that have been trained in those sort of things, ITIL and different IT standards. To be able to put that in place is very expensive for your on-premise implementations, and you should get that out of the box in any cloud implementation. Now, to make sure that software as a service meets your needs, and to make sure it's customizable, measure the tangible things that you need. So look at the things that your organization absolutely has to have in order to function. And if SaaS meets it, that's great. In a lot of cases, the public cloud solutions that are very canned and have a lot of different components that are industry specific can tie in to make sure that SaaS works. Now, there's intangible parts that you need to look at as well, things that you may want to customize after the fact, pieces that are going to need to be put in place and reports that are necessary, or customer portals. Those are things you should look at on the front end to make sure that the solution is going to meet your needs. And if you do have solutions that or needs that are outside of the box, then I think you should look at private cloud as well. And one of the things that Bob had mentioned earlier was the transition and migration, and taking data and transforming it from on-premise out to the cloud can be risky. So you want to make sure that it's somebody who has done it a whole bunch of times and that they have process and procedure in place. They should already have a project plan that they can work from. And those are good questions to ask on the front end when you're going through a sales cycle. You know, get a sample project plan. They should have processes in place, already ironed out. You know, this is how we handle an incident. This is how we handle if there's a problem and it needs to be escalated. This is how we handle implementation, and this is how we handle change management. You know, ultimately, I think what comes down to the choice from a cloud perspective is relationship and trust. You need to be able to trust your cloud provider, and if you have somebody that you've worked with in the past and they're able to provide a cloud solution, that's probably a really good place to start, at least from asking questions on cloud.
At Dynamic Communities, our migration of our existing Dynamic CRM was very customized. So moving it to the TriBridge cloud, we had to assess that risk and determine whether or not they were capable of moving it, because it was complex. But it's now in the cloud with our GP, and everyone's running in the same environment.
So then if you look at SaaS model, there's many that look and determine that the shrink-wrapped solutions don't work. So in that case, you do want to look at a dedicated environment, a private cloud model. You still get the economies of scale that are better than on-premise. You get the expertise, and you can get an all-in-one solution where you can get implementation, cloud, and software all in the same place. Now, the pricing from a cloud perspective certainly can get to a point where it feels unclear, and you should make sure that you understand what the true costs are, what's included, and also get your cloud provider to lay out what the future costs are going to be. So if you need to add a user or you need to add additional resources, you know what those are, and they are defined early in the contract cycle. Now 10 is a big one because a lot of times internal IT will not support cloud because they almost see it as a replacement to them. And internal IT is certainly still needed in a cloud implementation. It's important to get them on board early. You know, explain to them how it doesn't really threaten their job. Get them trained on some of the newer systems and how to work with it, and make sure that they're going to be working with experts so they can help teach them and help them understand as they move forward. So when would you want to move to cloud? There's several things that tie into it, and you know, one is reduce IT costs, which was very prevalent 3 or 4 years ago when the economy went through a downturn. But I think companies that are good stewards are still looking at reducing IT costs where they can. If you have a widely dispersed workforce, and Bob, you may want to speak to this, being able to access the system in one place is very important.
Yes, yes. We have folks all over the United States. We access our CRM through a browser, our GP through a terminal server, multiple devices, multiple folks. So we need to access our cloud environment 7 days a week, and with not being in one office all the time, having that access really helps us leverage the cloud and keep working on the business of the day.
Yeah, and reducing the cost of capital funding, you know, this OpEx versus CapEx argument is very important. As infrastructure becomes dated and you look at an upgrade cycle, that's really a great time to look and determine whether cloud is a favorable model, especially if you're having support issues around the same time, or having trust issues with your own internal IT. Yeah, so from a cloud agreement perspective, we're going to go through some of these pretty quickly. From a pricing standpoint, certainly watch to make sure that you understand the terms of auto renewals and when that would happen, and how the payment is laid out. Contracts are typically laid out so that the amount of time the contract has ties to how much the contract costs. To make sure that you get a clear idea on data usage, it's really important to make sure you understand who owns the data, which should be your company, and how to get that data if there's a termination in a contract. It's not really a question of if a contract will end or a relationship, it's when, so making sure that you're able to unwind it is extremely important. Disaster recovery is something that should come with every cloud implementation, because you should be able to have that redundancy in place, and there are things that IT has talked about for a long time but maybe not been able to provide. If you look at that, that ties to uptime, service level agreement guarantees, and you should look at 99.9% or higher. 99.9% is certainly a benchmark, and that's about 47 minutes per month. And we talked through some of the security parts before. I would make sure that you guarantee within the contracts that you're hitting those compliance levels, and that there are physical security components in place, and that you have the right to audit at any time. Definitely important to make sure from a support perspective that the organization is going to be able to not only onboard but take care of your needs as you move forward, and that you have the right ability and right clauses in place when you do or if you do need to end that contract. So I want to thank everybody for attending today. TriBridge Concerto Cloud Services provides Microsoft Dynamics and other business solutions, enterprise applications in the cloud, including Microsoft Dynamics GP, SL, AX, and NAV. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and turn it back over to John. Yes.
Great, thanks, Greg. Greatly appreciate that, and I'm sorry that we're running out of time, even as you're going through really interesting content there. But we want to make sure we get everyone out on time and back to work. So we're going to jump into our second of 3 polling questions right now. Then we're going to have a chance to ask a couple of questions. I will tell you, I've got more than a dozen questions piled up here, probably 15 plus. So what we'll have to do is, Greg, would you mind working with us afterwards, and let's make sure we get all these answered, even if we don't get to them, of course, in the next 5 minutes?
Absolutely happy to.
Okay, great. So we'll work on getting back directly to the folks who asked the questions, and we'll probably also post the questions, and hopefully Greg and even Bob might be able to help provide answers on performative.com so everyone can see, since we're not all going to be able to hear the answers to these questions. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this poll open for another 5 seconds. Let's get the last few votes in, and then we'll get into some quick Q&A. So I'm going to close this right now. We'll jump into our Q&A. First question, and this is a great one from, this is a tried and true finance person asking this question. What IT jobs would be reduced or eliminated in an organization moving to mostly cloud, if any? We mentioned that a little bit before. Us finance types are always trying to find hard dollar savings and also understand the impact on our company's organizational structure. So, Greg, why don't I start with you? What do you see out there typically?
Yeah, so some of it depends upon the size of the company. In larger organizations, IT is very specialized, so what you'll see are specific functions, so people that are responsible for server farms, or people that are what's called DBAs or database administrators, people that are responsible for network infrastructure. Those components can go away. In smaller companies, what you see are more generalists engaged, and oftentimes you're able to move not only your ERP system, but also your email, maybe your collaboration portal, out to the cloud. You can do a wholesale move to the cloud. So if you're an organization like Bob's, for example, you don't have to have any internal IT at all, and that's a choice you can make.
Great. Bob, what were your expectations coming into this with regards to that question?
For me, just not having to worry about supporting the network, the infrastructure, the firewalls, all the things that would be required for us to maintain our own network equipment. That's a lot to ask. We don't have the resources for that. We would have to obtain those items and then support them with a resource or two. And based on the aggressive rollout we wanted, we just didn't see it as viable for our company.
Gotcha. Okay, next question. Facebook just got hacked, which means no one is safe in the world. Does this change your perception, Bob, of cloud applications and their security, or do you still feel like, well, heck of a lot safer than we could have been, managing all that on our own? What's your take on that?
I'm not concerned. I mean, certainly I'm concerned about any type of hacking news I hear, generally speaking, but I feel like our environment that we're working with TriBridge is secure. We can access our data when we need to, and that concern is being addressed by them each day without exception. So I've put my trust in them to get it right and fill any gaps that come along, like we hear about periodically in the news.
Gotcha. Okay. Great. I'm going to say that in order to get folks out of here on time, we should probably make that the last question. Greg, did you want to add anything to Bob's response there before we move on to our closing items?
Yeah, I'd say real quick that from a Facebook perspective, first of all, there's millions and millions of users connected. And if you're looking at a cloud-based system, we have a limited population of people that are going to connect from your organization because it's your internal IT, for all intents and purposes. So we can limit the exposure there. But also that every bit as important as preventing is what your mitigation strategy is, because you're right, it's difficult, if not impossible, to stop every kind of incursion, but it's how you handle it and what countermeasures you have in place that are extremely important.
Gotcha. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so that's it for questions. Yes, we've got another dozen that we couldn't get to. We'll work with Greg and the great folks at TriBridge to get those answers. We'll also work with Greg and Bob to hopefully get some answers onto performative.com so we can all see them. Next up, we're going to hop into a couple cleanup items and then get to our final polling question. Once again, you will be prompted to take a short survey just after we finish the next polling question. So please stay on for that. It's just an extra 60 seconds. We really appreciate your feedback. And if you have any questions about CPE credit, please contact Chris Brower. You see her email information at the bottom of this page. Quick mention of Performatech. Performative has a tech conference open only to corporate finance, accounting, treasury, and directly related practitioners. It is, of course, free, like everything we do at Performative. It's in San Francisco. It's actually at the SFO Hyatt on March 20th. Also in the post-event survey, you can just click a button there. We'd be happy to register you, and great way to take a look at a lot of great technology. A second and final thanks to our friends at TriBridge for sponsoring today's event and also bringing us wonderful information in the form of Greg Pierce and Bob McAdam. Greg and Bob, thanks so much for your time and insight. We really appreciate you spending this time with us today.
John, thank you. Glad to be here.
Yes, thank you, John, and thank you, Greg, for having me today.
Absolutely our pleasure. We greatly appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and do the third and final polling question at this point. So we'll give this about 30 seconds. And you should see that hitting your screen right now. There it is. So please, everyone, go ahead and hop on that. And as soon as that's done, we'll go ahead and move over into our closing procedure and get everyone on their way to our final super quick post-event survey. So I'll take this moment while everyone's finishing up there to thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate your time and attention. Once again, in this post-event survey, if you'd like to be connected with Greg or with the good folks at TriBridge, you can indicate that with a click of a mouse, and we're happy to help make that connection. Also, please let us know how we did today. We always want to know how we can do better the next time out. So that's it. I'm going to go ahead and close out this final poll. Thanks, everyone, for participating. And thank you so much for giving us your hour this morning. We know how busy you are. We appreciate your spending time with us here at Performative. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out right now, and let's go ahead and lead you right into the final 1-minute survey. Thank you so much. We hope to see you again at performative.com or at another event. Take care, all.